A cold drizzle tapped gently on the windowpane of a small coffee shop nestled on a quiet street corner. Inside, the warm aroma of roasted beans and cinnamon pastries filled the air, blending with soft jazz playing in the background. It was a haven from the gray chill outside, a place where time seemed to slow down. The bell above the door jingled faintly as a man walked in, tall and well-dressed in a charcoal suit, his graying temples hinting at wisdom earned through years of success and sorrow. This was James Whittaker, a once celebrated tech CEO, known across the business world not only for his brilliance but also for the tragic loss of his wife 3 years ago. Since then, he'd withdrawn from public life, trading boardrooms for quiet cafes where he could work anonymously and find solace in routine. James took his usual spot, a corner seat beside the window, where he could observe the world without participating in it. His laptop glowed softly, spreadsheets open but untouched. His mind wandered, as it often did, to memories of the woman he had loved more deeply than words could ever express. The ache hadn't dulled, only settled into a quiet, ever-present hum. He sipped his black coffee and glanced out at the rain-slicked streets, lost in thought. That's when he heard the softest voice. "Can I sit here?" He looked up to see a little girl standing beside his table. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, wrapped in an oversized coat, her cheeks pale, her eyes too large for her delicate face. She clutched a small book to her chest and looked up at him hopefully. The cafe was unusually full that day, and all the other seats were taken. James blinked, startled. Children weren't common in his world anymore. Their innocence and energy were almost foreign to him now. He looked around, no parent in sight. "Of course," he replied gently, motioning to the chair across from him. She smiled, a small, weary curve of her lips that seemed too mature for her age. She climbed into the chair, placing her book carefully on the table. "What's your name?" James asked, curious but cautious. "Lila," she said softly. "My mom's ordering tea. She said I could sit if I was tired." James nodded. The girl had a slight tremor in her hands, and her breath came shallow, as if each word cost her something. "Nice to meet you, Lila. I'm James." She tilted her head. "That's a kind name. You look like someone important." James chuckled, surprised. "I used to be, not so much anymore." "I think you still are," she said simply. It was such an earnest reply that James felt something stir in him, something that had been dormant. Lila opened her book, a tattered copy of Charlotte's Web, and began reading silently, her finger tracing each word slowly. He watched her, intrigued and oddly touched. A few moments later, a woman appeared beside the table, flushed and slightly out of breath. She wore a caregiver's fatigue like a second skin, eyeliner smudged, hair pulled hastily into a bun, eyes scanning the room anxiously. Relief washed over her face when she saw Lila. "There you are," she said, kneeling beside the girl. "I was so worried." Lila smiled. "He said I could sit here." James stood. "It's all right," she asked politely. "It's no trouble." The woman looked at him, then did a double take. "You're James Whittaker, aren't you?" He stiffened, caught. "Yes, I suppose I still am." She looked embarrassed. "Sorry, I didn't mean to pry. I've read about you. My husband used to follow your work. Before he passed." A beat of silence passed. Shared loss hummed between them like a subtle chord. "I'm Claire," she said quietly. "Lila's mother." James nodded, sensing there was much more to her story. He glanced at Lila again, her fragile form, the quiet bravery in her eyes. "Is she all right?" Claire hesitated. "She has a rare blood disorder. It weakens her immune system. We're in town for her treatments." "It's been difficult." James felt the weight of her words press into his chest. He looked at the little girl again, so poised, so gentle despite the storm raging inside her body. "I'm sorry," he said genuinely. "That must be incredibly hard." Claire nodded. "She's stronger than I'll ever be. But we take it day by day." James found himself sitting back down, unable to look away from the girl. "Lila's remarkable." Claire smiled faintly. "She has that effect on people." Over the next few weeks, James began visiting the cafe more frequently, always choosing the same table. Sometimes Lila and Claire would be there, and sometimes they wouldn't. But on the days they came, something in him lit up again. They talked more, about books, about life, about everything and nothing. Claire opened up slowly, her warmth peeking through the armor of a mother who'd endured too much. James shared stories of his late wife, of his regrets, of the loneliness that success couldn't cure. One morning, he brought Lila a small wrapped box. She opened it to find a beautiful, hand-bound journal and a fountain pen with her name engraved on the side. Because stories like yours deserve to be written, he told her. Lila beamed, her eyes shining. I'll write every day, even if it's just a sentence. James looked at Claire, who mouthed a thank you, her voice caught in her throat. As the months passed, James became part of their routine, sharing meals, reading books aloud, even driving them to hospital appointments when Claire's car broke down. The nurses began to refer to him as Uncle James. Lila began to draw pictures of the three of them together, always smiling. Claire tried to protest his generosity, but James waved her off. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But what I didn't have was purpose. One day, after a long hospital visit, Lila fell asleep in the backseat of James's car. Claire sat in the passenger seat, silent for a long time. She asked me last night if you were my boyfriend, she said with a soft laugh. I didn't know what to say. James chuckled. And what did you say? I told her you were someone very special. He glanced at her. And what do you think? Claire turned to him, her eyes serious but warm. I think, I haven't felt this safe, this understood, in years. I think you're the first person who's looked at us without pity. I don't pity you, James said quietly. I admire you. They sat there in the car, the city lights glowing around them, something unspoken lingering in the space between them. When James reached over and gently took her hand, she didn't pull away. Months turned into a year. Lila's condition stabilized, thanks in part to a cutting-edge treatment James had helped fund. She grew stronger, her cheeks fuller, her laughter brighter. And James, once a man who walked through life like a ghost, found himself living again, not in boardrooms or billion-dollar deals, but in bedtime stories, burnt toast breakfasts, and family game nights. On a spring morning, as cherry blossoms danced outside the coffee shop where it all began, James knelt down in front of Lila and held out a small ring box. Do you think your mom would say yes if I asked her to marry me? Lila's eyes widened, and she hugged him tight. She already loves you. That evening, under a sky painted in gold and lavender, James asked Claire to marry him in the very place he had first met Lila. With tears in her eyes and Lila clapping beside them, Claire said yes. In the end, it wasn't fortune or fame that saved James, it was a tired little girl who asked a simple question. Can I sit here? And by saying yes, he found the love and family he never thought he'd have again.